Hey, ninth graders. I had a request from a few students to do a review of independent and dependent clauses and how to do the different sentence patterns that you're supposed to be editing for this next assignment. So you should have turned in your Icarus paragraph. You should have gone back to turnitin.com and listened to my comments and looked at the blue, I think they show up as blue for you, but blue marks on your paper. If you click on any of those blue marks, or like they say SP4, it'll open up a dialog box and it'll remind you what sentence pattern 4 is. But because some students have asked for some more instruction, I'm going to go ahead and post this video and go back through this particular sheet. Now, we did this notes sheet way back in the fall when we actually saw each other. And many of you may even have it in your binder or in the notes section under English in your Google Docs. I don't know. But I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing over again as a review. I'm not going to go real slow, and I may not do all the examples because I only have about 14 minutes left on this screencast. So let's go ahead and start at the top. Okay, the first thing you have to remember is what a clause is and what a phrase is. So a clause is a group of words that has a subject and a verb in it. And there are two types of these clauses. There's independent and dependent. So when I say the words independent and dependent, I want you to think about what that word kind of means. What does it mean to be independent? And then we did this up on the board and we made notes. And you guys told me, if I remember correctly, examples of things that are independent. Living on your own is independent. Being able to do things for yourself, not needing any help. And then dependent, you guys told me, was like kind of like a baby. A baby is dependent on other people. Or even you as teenagers can be dependent on your parents or guardians. For example, they have to drive you somewhere because you can't drive. If you can drive yourself, you might feel independent. If you can't, you're dependent. All right, so with that being said, clauses can be independent and dependent as well. A clause that can stand on its own is independent. This is also, oops, I better do this in a different color until I practice this here. So a sentence is independent. Okay. A fragment is dependent. So if you have just part of a sentence. And this, by the way, also known as sentence pattern 1. So sentence pattern 1 is a sentence, and that is an independent clause. All right. So let's take a look. A phrase. A phrase is just a group of words without both a subject and a verb. So a phrase could be something like running into the room. All right, so that's a phrase. Running could be a verb in a lot of cases. And if I were to sort of say running into the room, notice that can't stand by itself. But it's not a clause because it doesn't have what? Both a subject and verb. Okay, so phrase and clause, that's the difference. It'll make more sense as we go through and review some of this here. I'm going to go over the sentence pattern 4 again. 4 is my fanboys rule. Remember me saying that in class a lot? It's called fanboys because it's for, and, nor, but, or, yet, so. Fanboys. You can remember that, you got it. All right, pattern 4 uses a fanboy to join together two sentences, what we also can call independent clauses. All right, so here's the first one. Oops, looks like my spacing got all messed up. Here's an example. I like to go shopping. Can that stand on its own? Is it a sentence? Absolutely. If I came up to you and said, I like to go shopping, you'd be like, cool, let's go shopping. Then you'll notice I've got this right here. I never have any money. also independent. Notice that these two independent clauses are joined by a fanboy, the word but. When you join two independent clauses, you must put a comma. So in a lot of the mistakes that y'all are making, you're forgetting this little tiny comma. You've used the word but and you've joined two independent clauses, but you didn't put the comma. Another way to say this is sentence, fanboy, sentence. If you have that, you need a comma right before the fanboy. All right, let's take a look at when it doesn't work. Here's an example, almost the same. I like to go shopping. Okay, we already know that's independent. If I just said, never have any money, you'd be like, what? Who doesn't? Notice this is a phrase, not a clause like we have up here, just a group of words. Remember? Phrase, group of words. When you have this situation, notice there is no comma here because you're not joining two sentences or two independent clauses. So let's go over the rule. The rule for pattern 4 is if you have a sentence and a sentence joined by one of the fanboys, you must put a comma. If you don't have two sentences, but you are using a fanboy, then you don't put a comma. So here's that example for you. Let's take a look right here. Let's do a couple of these together. Let's test it. Here's how I test it. The photographer held up a bear. That is independent. I'm going to use the same colors. The little boy still wouldn't smile. That's a sentence. I think I'm using the same colors. Notice we have now a fanboy right here. Let's look at our fanboys. We have yet. So sentence, sentence, fanboy. What do we got to do? Put a comma right there. I'm going to make that comma. I'm going to make that red. Ooh, that's terrible. Let's not do that. Let's change it to something lighter. Oops. All right. Well, this is where my screencast skills are failing. Okay, so you've got to put a comma there. Let's do another one. Let's try this one. My friend. Okay, that's not even close to being a sentence. That's like a pronoun in a noun. So that's not going to work, is it? Let's color code that. What did we do that for? A phrase. A phrase. Our phrases are green. All right. So my friend. That doesn't work. As soon as you know it doesn't work, you know you're not going to need a comma here. So what's happening with this is that it's joining my friend and I. It's just connecting two subjects. It does not follow this rule. Let's try a different one. We planned on seeing the latest comedy. That is a subject, it has a verb, and it's a complete idea. Absolutely independent. There's our fanboy. Let's check the other side. Ended up watching a horror film. If I came up to you and said, ended up watching a horror film, you'd be like, what? So that is not independent. That actually is, again, another phrase. So look, we don't have matching. If that doesn't work, there's no comma needed right here. You only need it if it separates two independent clauses. Oof, let's try this one. So I feel like this is one you need a lot of help with. The dog buried his bone. That's a sentence. The cat sniffed around it. That's a sentence. So what do we got to do? There's the fanboy. You know what we have to do. You got to put a comma. All right, just because I'm weird and I have to make things look the same. You know me. There you go. All right, let's move on to the next one. Pattern 6 and pattern 10 both get frequently confused. They're very, very similar. Let's look at what they look like. So up here on 6, notice I'm using the term dependent clause. All right, and looks like, what color did I use for that up here? I used red. Okay, let's keep it similar. So dependent clause. The dependent clause is easy to figure out because it's always going to have what we call a marker word. So I'm actually going to make this marker word a different color for us. Let's make it yellow. What the heck? So because I like to go shopping. With this, it can't stand by itself. It's like the little baby, right? If I came up to you and said, because I like to go shopping, you'd be like, what's the rest of it, Mr. Blue? What you got? I don't get it. So this is dependent. It is dependent on what? This is dependent on the independent clause. So there you go. Remember we said right here, dependent relies on the independent in order to make sense. You wouldn't just stop talking right here. You got to have it. And if that's the case, guess what you got to have? Dependent, comma, independent. Now pattern 10 kind of looks like it, but it's not. Here's where we get to use those transition words. So this right here, after school, that is not a clause. It doesn't have a subject and a verb. And it's not, but it is still relies on this independent clause. I can't just come up to you and say after school. Okay, but the difference here is that with your 10, it's just a grouping of words. It's a phrase. Let's get that green out for that. So after school, and it's connected to, of course, the main idea. I like to go shopping. Let's color code that up too. There you go. So 6 and 10, what's the difference? 6 is a dependent clause, and 10 is just a phrase or transition words. Okay. I am going to have you guys look at label each of these as 6s or 10s. Okay, so let's get our helpers out here. A 6 has to have a marker word. I think we did that in yellow. So when I was a younger girl. All right. So when you see words like when in the beginning, that is a big clue. You've got a 6. And then, what did we do that as? Red? Okay. When I was a younger girl. So I know right away, this is a pattern 6. I'm going to put SP6 next to it. And then, of course, you've got your independent clause right there because it needs it to make sense. If I came up to you and said, when I was a younger girl, when I was a younger girl, what? What, Mr. B? What happened? Well, I still believed in the tooth fairy. This is independent. All right, let's check this one out. Before I went to bed, I would leave the tooth fairy a tooth for her under my pillow. Well, is it a 6 or is it a 10? You got to look at what comes first. Does this portion here have a marker word plus an independent clause? Why, yes. Yes, it does. So let's do this in yellow. Let's do the rest of it in red. Cool. And then here's your independent, right? It helps the sentence make sense. This is sentence pattern 6. Oh my goodness gracious, Mr. Glee. Okay, my skills. Let's look at the next day. Do you see a marker word like when, before, after, because? Nope. Do you see something that has a subject and a verb in it? Nope. What you see is pattern 10. You see some transition words. And look, independent clause right there. So you should know right away that's not a 6. That's a, whoops, not a 20. We don't have a 20. A 10. I'll tell you right now without doing any more color coding because I'm almost out of time. This is a 6. And this is a 6. You can go through and look at why I said that. All right, I hope that after you've watched this video, you know now that an independent clause can stand on its own. A dependent clause needs something to make sense. And a phrase is a group of words. Feel free to go back through this video, do some samples, and then what really helps, go back to your writing. Look at the end of the line in your paragraph where I wrote SP6 and go, okay, I goofed. How do I fix it? Let me know if you have questions. I sure do miss you guys. And I'm hoping you're doing well. Talk soon.